Welcome to Hardin-Jefferson High School, home of the high-flying Hawks located here in Sour Lake, Texas. The Hawks won state championships on the boys' side in basketball in 1967, 1991, and 2007. On this particular program, we're going to focus on the 25-year anniversary of the 1991 state championship team, led by head coach Dr. Charles Breithaupt. He grew up in a small town not too far from here in Buna, Texas.
Buna won 7 state championships in a 9-year period in the 50s and 60s. So I grew up during that time, and I watched that Buna offense that was created by Cotton Robinson and assisted by the girls coach, R.C. Hardin. They collaborated on that offense, and it's been utilized by a lot of different teams, but that was the formation of my coaching philosophy.
Cotton Robinson won 538 games with the Buna offense as the Cougars won 7 state titles, and his assistant coach, Jimmy Horn, took it to Snook, where he and several other coaches, including his brother Don Horn, won 10 more state championships. So what is the Buna offense?
His best shooter on the same side of his best postman. They ran kind of a high-low double post, and his best rebounder on the backside. And they were famous about working on specific shots from that area only, that they'd shoot them in a game.
You have to remember the old Buna teams were very deliberate. Of course, no three-point line. You spent most of your time trying to get the ball inside to the post players.
Jimmy Burke was a standout player for Buna in their heyday and would later coach at Hardin-Jefferson. Breithaupt was one of his assistant coaches. A seed was planted with Jimmy's son Jeff and the Little Dribblers program.
You know, Dad's history at Buna was always a big part of our life growing up. So he started the Little Dribblers program at Hardin-Jefferson, and so from an early age, that's what I remember is playing basketball with Dad and the stories that he would tell and how good he still was, even 20 years later.
I got the chance to go to Hardin-Jefferson and work with a guy named Jimmy Burke, who was the head basketball coach there, and he gave me my chance to learn how to become a coach, and I began to progress, and then he left to take an elementary principal's job, and I took over as a head basketball coach, and that very first year we went to the regional finals. So I was living with his players and his system. I got to drive the bus and take the team to the regional tournament. So I spent 7 years at Hardin-Jefferson. Some of the finest talent that I ever had was during those years. We won 23 games plus every year, made the playoffs every year, so we had a really good run. Then I got the chance to go to Beaumont Westbrook. The school had only opened in 1982, and I got to spend 4 years there following the legendary Fred Williams, who had won 3 straight state championships at Beaumont Hebert, who ended up becoming Beaumont Westbrook. And so those 4 years coaching at Westbrook really helped me to see even more about what coaching was about. Learned a great deal coaching at the highest level in Texas high school basketball. And I was fortunate enough to coach a guy by the name of Luke Jackson. Luke was the son of Luke Jackson, who played on the 1967 World Championship team for the Philadelphia 76ers and was named one of the 50 all-time great players in NBA history.
HJ offered an athletic director job on top of the head basketball title to Charles, so he accepted.
My dad took a job from Woodville over to Hardin-Jefferson as the principal of the high school. We were kind of in a state of flux as far as our basketball program, and Mickey Riggs was the athletic director at the time, and he was the head coach for the football team. He knew that we needed a kind of a stimulus to come in, kind of change kind of the program completely, and he reached out to Coach Breithaupt to see if he'd had interest to come back. He had to have everything kind of fall into place in order for him to come back. When Mickey Riggs took the East Chambers principal's job, it allowed Coach Breithaupt to come over and be the athletic director and the head basketball coach over there. So we were really excited when we got him back from Westbrook.
When they gave him the job, he got a pretty good raise, plus he was also athletic director. Very few basketball coaches are athletic directors, mostly are in football. But he called me that day and he said, "Daddy, I've been offered a job back at Hardin-Jefferson." I said, "Charles, do you realize what you're leaving?" He said, "State championship team down there, if I stayed." But he said, "You gotta have a good bunch of boys coming in Hardin-Jefferson." I said, "No, they're not. I watched them play Buna last year as freshmen. They got beat 30 points. They're terrible." He said, "I'll whip them into shape," and he did.
Look at kind of what we had at Hardin-Jefferson versus what he was leaving from Westbrook. 98% of the people said, there's really not a choice. I mean, stay with Westbrook. You got better talent there. and he saw something in us that other people didn't see.
They had been been in a rebuilding mode. They had not made the playoffs since I left in the 4 prior years. We had some really good players that they didn't know they were good. They were talented young men, they had great parents. Parents who let me work them really hard. And they were one of the hardest working teams I've ever had.
We ended up getting Coach Breithaupt my junior year. We felt like what he was going to do was going to be able to help us all get more playing time as well as go ahead and be successful, and that's what happened.
Well, obviously, when you have a coaching transition, there is some time of anxiety. What are we going to get? Who are we going to get? When it was announced that it was going to be Coach Breithaupt, knowing the kind of program he was running over at Westbrook and the opportunities they were going to have that year, it was exciting to know that he wants to come over here and coach us.
I can't say I knew the back history with Coach Breithaupt and the legacy and the history with Buna. I knew him because he had lived in the neighborhood. I think the thing that I was probably the most drawn to was just the charisma, how he was with us. We'd play these pickup basketball games in the driveway, and he would play with us. And then to hear that he was coming back and he was going to be our coach, I mean, there was nothing but excitement for all of us.
It was such a great kind of supportive moment where the whole community is behind the kids and kind of really let the kids know you get out there and you put your best foot forward, you're going to be successful.
They bought into the system and they bought into what we were trying to do. And the first year back, we won 23 games, made the playoffs, got beat in the first round. But I knew we had the makings of a great, great team. I thought we had state championship caliber players.
We had learned to get better. We had developed in that first year of him being back. But we had not quite developed that real winning mentality.
Coach Breithaupt came on board. There was a lot of new people on the varsity team. We lost a lot of close games. The same thing caught us in the first round. Played a good center team, led in the fourth quarter, just like we had many times that year. Managed to not get the win that night, and that was frustrating, but we knew we had the makings of something that could be special.
From tragedy to title, the Hawks endured a lot over the next season.
Yeah, the whole campus was on lockdown. They had police officers everywhere. They were trying to find out, where the active shooter was.
A lot of shock. We grew up very quickly.
That was a tragic day.
That story and more when the Hardin-Jefferson High-Flying Hawks continues.
It's about the time you missed picking up your granddaughter. It's about the time you missed golfing with friends. It's about the time pain stopped you from dancing at your daughter's wedding. Bone and joint injuries shouldn't force you to compromise your lifestyle another day. So isn't it about time you did something about this? Let the orthopedic experts at Christus help. We offer same and next day appointments with board-certified orthopedic specialists here to help you get back to what you love to do. We offer a dedicated orthopedic unit and access to the region's most comprehensive orthopedic care, including advanced imaging and surgical technology. We offer immediate answers with same and next day appointments available. It's time to say, it's about time. Call Christus today, and remember, same and next day appointments are available. Christus and Beaumont Bone and Joint. Call now and get back to what you love.
I'm Dr. Gene Isabel, fellowship trained orthopedic surgeon in sports medicine.
And I'm Wayne Harvey. After injuring my shoulder, I couldn't even lift my arm. Thanks to Dr. Isabel, I now have full range of motion back in my shoulder, and I'm even running again.
If you're having shoulder pain or weakness, early treatment can help you get back to normal quicker. Christus Southeast Texas Orthopedic Specialty Center and Beaumont Bone and Joint Institute, same and next day appointments are available. Call 1-800-218-9355.
The 1990 season didn't end as planned for Hardin-Jefferson. Although they made the postseason, they were eliminated in the by-district round. Dr. Charles Breithaupt knew his team needed to be in better condition, so he asked all the players to go run cross country. And from there, the Hawks took flight.
He felt like that we weren't very mentally tough. And so his solution was, we're going to get out there and run cross country because that's the ultimate mental toughness.
Charles said, I remember at the beginning of the season we talked about running 100 miles with 13 miles short, and we're going to complete all that today. It's a far distance to get in a car and drive. He had stations every 3 miles with our parents there with Gatorade and water, wet towels to kind of motivate us and help push us along. He wrote to us, when was the time you understood that you could win state? And I told him it was at that point.
When you finish a half marathon, especially as a teenager, you feel like you can do absolutely anything. I feel like probably the scrimmages in practice were far more difficult than the games were.
The games were nothing compared to all the work that we did in the preseason and the practices and the early morning plyometrics and weightlifting that we did in the preseason as well. The games were definitely a reward.
overcoming mental challenges and how could we handle adversity. Running 13 miles was definitely one of those obstacles we had to overcome.
We would go through off season at school, we would run, it was more like a cross country workout. We'd run full games during the period and then go run 3 miles.
It was laid out before us, it was a challenge that Coach Breithaupt put in front of us. We responded to it, and I think it gave us, like I said, a sense of accomplishment moving into the season.
The extra things that he did, trying to take us and put us in very uncomfortable situations so that we could learn to operate when we were uncomfortable, was absolutely critical to the development of that program.
You're not growing as a person, you're not growing as an athlete if you're comfortable every single day you come to practice. Once he let us believe that we were able to achieve that, we were all in. We were all coachable, we were all kids that whatever he told us to do, we did.
With all of the success in the 1990 and 91 seasons here at Hardin-Jefferson High School on the hardwood, there was also tragedy off the floor that affected this entire community.
Yeah, the whole campus was on lockdown. They had police officers everywhere. They were trying to find out, where the active shooter was.
The shooter was 44-year-old Hardin-Jefferson High School assistant principal Harvey Dixon, who was reportedly despondent over losing an employment discrimination lawsuit against the school district when he walked into an administrator's office and opened fire with a .357 caliber handgun, according to local police. Dixon was charged with murder in the shooting death of 45-year-old assistant superintendent Roderick Hill, whose son Robin was the eventual valedictorian and sitting with Jean Isabel in the school library.
He and I are looking at each other as like, hey, you're #1 in the class, I'm #2 in the class. You think that has something to do with that? I mean, what's going on? You could hear Dr. Breithaupt's voice outside saying he was basically taking control of the situation. For him to just take over like he did just showed his leadership qualities. He was able to bring Robin out, and he had to break the news to him that his dad had passed away that day.
A lot of shock, I can say this, and some fear definitely at that time.
A wake-up call that seemed to bring the community of Sour Lake and the Hardin-Jefferson boys basketball team closer together.
Later in that afternoon, we all huddled together in the locker room. Coach Breithaupt was there, and he talked to us about what he knew at the time and what we should do moving forward. And he mentioned things like, hey, we need to focus on our faith, our family, our academics, and then basketball. In that order, he was adamant about those things. And then we all went home to our families to be with them. It was a sobering day.
In the meantime, Dixon pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and a jury convicted and sentenced him to 60 years in prison. Charles Breithaupt opened the season with Midnight Madness on October 22nd of 1990 and said the Hawks were determined to be the first team on the floor in October and the last team off in March. Breithaupt also added the matchup zone in the half court, plus the situation chart, which had 25 late game situations on a single page.
You spent most of your time trying to get the ball inside to the post players, and we did that as well, but we really celebrated the three-point shot. I took a lot of that from Rick Pitino. I took a lot from Loyola Marymount and Paul Westhead, and a whole lot from Jerry Tarkanian, whose both offensive and defensive philosophies matched what we were trying to do.
Where you were on offense is where you were on defense, in the backcourt and in the front court. Where you ran the break as we transitioned from defense to offense put you in your offensive position, but we were looking for those early break opportunities.
We know we was going to press for the whole 32 minutes, so we felt like in the second half, our press was going to start working on all the other teams.
Relentless, high pressure, high octane attack on offense, putting a lot of pressure on your opponent, and both offensively and defensively. And that paired with the fact that we had some good size, two guys 6'7", another 6'4", and had some shooters to go with it. And that was our goal, to jump up on somebody early and put them away, and it broke some team spirits.
We could really shoot the ball. I mean, we had three-point shooters. We had two 6'7" guys, had another 6'4" guy on the ball, and we were deep. Our bench was good, and that just doesn't happen very often. Charles believed in fast-paced offense, pressure defense. He put in the 1-2-1-1, even positioned the guard so we could get out and run, and the ball would be kicked ahead. They were always going to be in the same spot.
The ball had to go inside out. We got a lot of recognition for shooting a lot of threes and making a lot of threes, but it all started going inside first.
We put the system in place that we thought would give us the best chance of winning each game every night. Coach Breithaupt did a great job of fitting the system to the group of guys that we had out there.
Coach Breithaupt's decision to have Jamie Harrison run the point was key. Charles said Jamie was the best interceptor in the press he had ever seen, with a magnificent feel for the game. Jamie had a school record 250 steals, including 16 in one game, in his junior season against Vider.
He called this kid up, I want you to start as point guard on our basketball team. After the game was over with, I came up to coach and I said, this is our point guard. This is, you figured it out. You know, nobody else would be able to see this, but your vision for this team, this is exactly what we need as a point guard.
He took some very old, traditional, but had been very successful offensive principles. He took some very new and innovative things that no one else was doing in the country, really, in high school basketball, only a couple even at the collegiate level. And he was able to very masterfully blend those together in an artistic way that created a product that, again, not only produced wins and a lot of success on the court, but was a lot of fun for fans to watch and an awful lot of fun for us to participate in.
Of course, Jamie Harrison was a tremendous leader on the floor. He could really deliver the ball, break down presses, and served as a tremendous interceptor in the middle of our press.
Joel Nolte was the two guard and ran the point when Harrison was not playing. Nolte set a school record in three-point attempts with 337, making 127, which was another school record. He was one of 4 senior starters in 1991.
Being a perimeter player, I benefited greatly from Gene being 6'7" and scoring 20 points a game. He drew a lot of defensive crowd, so I found many open shots for that.
Jeff Burke averaged nearly 14 points per game and shot 56% from the field, also leading the team with a 74% shooting percentage from the free throw line.
I made the decision to move Jeff Burke from an inside player to an outside player. So at 6'4", he being a small forward gave me a chance to really maximize the height. So old coaching adage is play the biggest team possible, and we were able to do that.
Our offense was completely based on getting the ball inside to Gene and Shannon.
Shannon Holmes might have been the best all-around player on the team. He could defend, rebound, put the ball on the floor, post up, and score with the best of them, according to Breithaupt. Averaging nearly 16 points per game, Shannon shot 52% from the field, adding 62 assists and 36 blocked shots while grabbing 8.5 rebounds per contest.
It was a different way of thinking at the time, and I think we caught some people off guard with that style of play early on. It fed off of itself, and the points came and the wins came and it accumulated over the course of the season.
Gene Isabel might have been the most improved on the team since moving to Hardin-Jefferson in the 7th grade. Isabel averaged 20 points per game in his senior season in 1991, shooting 64% from the field. He once scored 58 points in a game against Hardin, making 25 field goals in that contest. Isabel hauled in close to 8 rebounds per game and blocked 78 shots in that season.
You had to double Gene because he was that good. He got kicked back to a three-point shooter, so you had to pick your poison.
Isabel. The magical ride of 1991 is next when the Hardin-Jefferson High-Flying Hawks continues. Trust, expertise, and understanding. Qualities our doctors at the Beaumont Bone and Joint Institute live by.
In simple terms for patients, you tell them you're just basically zipping this right back up on the face with these really strong sutures that we use.
Dr. Gene Isabel was born and raised in the Golden Triangle. Long before he was a doctor, Gene was a patient who suffered an injury while playing sports at Hardin-Jefferson High School.
In my junior year in high school, I had an injury during football season and actually tore one of the tendons in my hand. I came to see one of the orthopedic doctors here at Beaumont Bone and Joint, Dr. Marshall Hayes. He diagnosed the problem, was able to fix it. I was out for the remainder of the football season, but we came back and had a very good year, my junior year in basketball. That kind of motivated me to go into medicine. Going to medical school, going to orthopedic residency, and going to do my sports fellowship in Houston at Baylor College of Medicine. We worked with the Houston Texans, the NFL team, also worked with the Houston Astros there. Kind of learned their techniques as far as diagnosing the patient with the problem as well as their surgical techniques, and be able to bring that back home to Beaumont.
Isabel is an athlete turned doctor who has the experience to get you back in the game.
Great physicians are in the group, total joint replacement, hand and upper extremity, foot and ankle especially, orthopedic trauma and orthopedic sports medicine. We have all the bases covered.
Don't let an injury slow you down. Seek help at the Beaumont Bone and Joint Institute and Christus Orthopedic Specialty Center. Call for an appointment today at 1-800-218-9355. This is the gym where all of the Hardin-Jefferson championships were won on the hardwood. It is now the gymnasium for Henderson Middle School. But the Hawks who played here have great memories of the old barn. Early tournament victories over teams like East Chambers and Oklahoma defending champion Hugo were certainly eye-openers. In fact, at halftime of one big game, Charles Breithaupt didn't like the demeanor of his team, who had a double-digit lead, I might add. Well, to get their attention, Charles threw his watch across the locker room floor and it shattered in what seemed like 1,000 pieces.
The watch throwing incident was a little bit of a wake-up call. Definitely brought us down a notch. We're thinking that he should be happy, and he's obviously not happy. So it was a little bit of a gut check time for us.
Coach Breithaupt was one of the greatest mind Jedis I've ever seen. He could get me to believe that I could 360 dunk it. He knew the perfect time to really press us a little bit, and he knew when to back off and let us go and let us be free. And that's something as a coach that you find out that's really tough to do.
The 1991 Hardin-Jefferson Hawks had little trouble through the regular season. In fact, they were rolling right along until the regional final when they took on Brookshire Royal over at Blinn Junior College. It was a game for the ages.
You look at the stats of that game, everything was dead even. Both teams deserved to win. Coach Nathaniel Richardson and his team were true champions in the way they conducted themselves and the way they played. We were very fortunate, but our players hung in there.
Oh, that was a classic. I mean, it went down to the wire where we had to come down to our big man hitting free throws, Gene Isabel.
The longest shot, from a postman standpoint is your free throw. And so that was one thing Coach knew that I needed to work on.
An evenly matched game came down to a Gene Isabel free throw who shot less than 50% from the charity stripe. His extra work with Charles Breithaupt late in the season paid off as he hit a key free throw to win the game.
He looked at me, he kind of gave me that finger, he said, "You got this one?" And I gave him a thumbs up, went over there and hit the free throw, and we won the game by 1. Gene made a free throw with 6 seconds left, I believe, and we kept them from scoring on the last possession.
The final shot, the guy that had been wearing us out the whole game, a guy named Trey Barley, he let it go, and I thought it was in. It tipped off the edge of the rim and missed, and of course celebration ensued.
The bus trip to the state tournament in Austin was an adventure to say the least. Leaving the Golden Triangle, it took well over 3 hours just to get to the western side of Houston. The air conditioner had issues as the team stopped off at Maid Creek High School in Katy for a practice session. What should have taken a few hours turned into an 8-hour journey to the capital city. The bus even stalled on the way to dinner, but it kept the boys' minds off the stress of the state tournament. On that Thursday, the Flying Hawks arrived at the Irwin Special Events Center for the 70th annual state basketball tournament. Clarksville had already won their state semifinal 54-46 over Bowie to advance to the finals. The Hawks would play Stafford in the other Class 3A semifinal. Hardin-Jefferson forced 28 turnovers and shot 58% from the floor, using a 30-1 run to end the game 97-52. Gene Isabel scored 29 points and Shannon Holmes had 17. Both were named to the TABC All-State team. Joel Nolte tossed in 16 points and Jeff Burke added 14. Next up for #1 ranked Hardin-Jefferson was the Clarksville Tigers, who were ranked 2nd in the state.
When I came in 1984 to bring Hardin-Jefferson to the state tournament, I was in such awe. I was so nervous, and I coached that way, and our players sensed that nervousness as well. We had some great players on that team. We very well could have won. We lost to an undefeated New Boston team coached by my good friend Gary Schiffner.
Coach Breithaupt had a carefully prepared speech, but knew the team was ready and kept his message short.
I saw the determination on their face. I put my notes back in my pocket. You guys are ready. Go out and do what you've done all year long. You'll be just fine. We came out on a 9-0 run and got ahead. We looked up, we were down 11-9. They came back.
The Hawks led the Tigers 42-34 at halftime, but Isabel picked up his 4th foul early in the second half. Little did Clarksville coach Clyde Carlisle know at the time how the Hawks would step up, led by Shannon Holmes and his team-high 19 points and 10 rebounds for a double-double.
Gene's out. Now it's time for us to get to work. It was a real team effort.
Jeff Burke finished with 16 points, while Joel Nolte tossed in 14, and Dwayne Joubert had 9 key points. The Hawks increased their lead down the stretch with 11,445 fans in attendance. Each starter was pulled in the final seconds to a standing ovation from the Hardin-Jefferson faithful. The Hawks won the game 75-68 to earn the school's 2nd state title in boys basketball, finishing the year 37-1. Ironically enough, Jeff Burke's dad won a state title at Buna 30 years earlier to the day, which is also where Dr. Charles Breithaupt's father lived.
For me, it's just something, again, if we look at fate, how things just kind of line up for you. And then the personnel in those positions just help create a perfect offense and defense for us.
It was great. Hoisting the trophy, having a medal hung around your neck, postseason accolades, all those kind of things were a blur. Until we got outside with the families by the buses and we were able to have a hug from mom and dad and congratulations from one of the other players' parents and those kind of things. And I remember a lot of those conversations very distinctly.
The entire starting lineup from the 1991 Hardin-Jefferson High-Flying Hawks earned their doctorate degrees for the respected career paths.
I own a company and I've got 100 employees and I'm looking at these guys and their accomplishments and I'm thinking, man, do I need to go back and get my master's and get my doctorate in order to fit in? No, very proud of them. And again, I think it's a little bit of that level of accountability.
They went and made lives of their own in their own success, and that's what makes this team so special.
Tragedy would prevent Charles Breithaupt from leaving HJ the following summer as Chucky Seaman, who made his one and only shot in the playoffs, was killed in a car accident in the summer of '91.
Chucky Seaman, it was a single car accident right out here on Highway 326, just coming home from a summer tournament over in West Hardin. Just doesn't seem quite real.
Breithaupt said Chucky, who would have been a senior, was an inspiration to everyone he touched, and had he lived, the Hawks would have won the 1992 state basketball title as well.
I think whenever that following summer when we lost the teammate, he made the decision that he had to come back, get us through that senior year.
Despite losing 4 starters the following season, HJ averaged 109.5 points per game. Neil Laminack led the way with nearly 22 points per game, with David Underwood tossing in close to 20 points per contest. Clay Davis had 17. Jamie Harrison averaged a double-double for the season with 10.8 assists and 10.9 points per game, even setting a national record for steals and assists in one contest, one season, and a career. Finishing 35-2, the second loss of the season wouldn't come until the regional tournament, when eventual state champion Groesbeck added an undefeated basketball title to their 1991 football championship as well.
We hadn't played a team in 3A that was like that, and I think our style of play just fit perfectly with what they wanted to do, which was just run around and beat athletes.
Here's a look at the 1991 University Interscholastic League State Championship for the Hardin-Jefferson Hawks. Of course, the net coming with it from the Irwin Center where the game was played. That victory over Clarksville ended up being the second state championship for Hardin-Jefferson. They would go on to win another state title in 2007. Their head coach was an assistant on that 1991 team, Todd Sutherland.
Coach Sutherland is somebody that helped me become who I am today, just like a father figure. Just a great man. I mean, you love to be around him. Just a great inspiration to my life.
Todd Sutherland would also lead Koontz to a state title. In fact, he has 709 victories and coached East Chambers to the state championship final this past season in 2016. In addition to his high school football duties, Dwayne Joubert also guided Koontz to 2 state basketball titles in the mid-2000s. Hardin-Jefferson Superintendent Shannon Holmes hired former HJ player Clay Davis, who has a 53-17 record as head coach of the Hawks in 2 seasons. Clay also coached at Tatum and Jasper, following an assistant coaching job at HJ under Coach Sutherland. Dr. Charles Breithaupt was recently inducted into the Texas Sports Hall of Fame in Waco and has co-authored several books, including King Cotton, which is about the Buna boys basketball team under Coach Cotton Robinson. Plus, he co-authored the book Press On, documenting the Hardin-Jefferson boys basketball team, who is celebrating their 25-year anniversary of that 1991 state title. Pick up copies of both books today. Hardin-Jefferson High School was known as the Rebels back in 1967 when they won a 2A state championship. Of course, they went on to win 3A state titles in 1991 and 2007. In fact, the girls won state championships in 1986 and 89 here for the high-flying Hawks. A lot of success on the hardwood for Hardin-Jefferson High School. We want to say special thanks to our main title sponsor, Beaumont Bone and Joint. Special thanks to Dr. Jean Isabel and everybody that was a part of this program. We do appreciate it. I'm Jeff Power. Thanks for being with us.
Come to the Museum of the Gulf Coast, where our area collection of the Jurassic period meets Janis Joplin with 60-plus Music Hall of Fame musicians, head coach Jimmy Johnson, Bum and Wade Phillips with 60-plus sports legends, and more than 35 notable people. Discover the arrival of early man to our area and the Civil War in the Gulf Coast region. Learn the stories behind this and so much more. Open 7 days a week. Museum of the Gulf Coast, a museum like no other.